Man, I'm sitting there trying to put content out. Gotta feed the viewers. Oh, you Xbox fans, you're gonna love this. Oh, hello viewers. Another beautiful day. Hope your five senses of work, health, and strength is good or excellent. Hey, listen to this. You Xbox fans is gonna love this. Remember I told you that the FTC had no case, right? Remember I told you this? Listen to this. The U.S. Federal Court, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, Microsoft over the Activision deal has come to an end. The FTC officially drops the case. They dropped it. Like I told you before, they never had a case. That Activision Blizzard was on a first come, first served basis. Whoever had big pockets can get them. They never had a case. Anyway, here's the deal. It says here, as spotted by The Verge, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, FTC, has officially dropped its case against Microsoft over its Activision Blizzard King acquisition. The organization filed a motion to dismiss the case today, May 22nd, 2025, finally closing the door on the FTC attempts to block the largest acquisition in video game history. Microsoft first announced its acquisition of Activision Blizzard King at the beginning of 2022, and by the end of 2022, the FTC had filed a lawsuit against Microsoft, and so began the long contest that has continued to stretch on. Even after the FTC lost in its one major change to really stop the deal from happening at the beginning of this month, it lost a final attempt at stopping the deal and has chosen to put its fight to rest. It says here on May 7th, 2025, the Ninth Circuit affirms the decision of the United States District Court for the Northern District of California, FTC versus Microsoft Corp., denying commission application for preliminary injunction to block the acquisition of Activision Blizzard Inc. by Microsoft Corp. The filing reads, the commission has determined that the public interest is best served by dismissing the administrative litigation in this case. Accordingly, it is hereby ordered that the complaint in this matter and its here is dismissed by the commission. Vice Chair and President of Microsoft, Brad Smith, celebrated the dismissal, saying, today's decision is a victory for players across the country and for common sense in Washington, D.C. We are grateful to the FTC for today's announcement. And it says, after losing its initial attempt to stop the deal, Microsoft closed its acquisition of Activision Blizzard King in October 2023, but that didn't stop the FTC from trying to break it up. After the fact, the organization also spoke out against the decision Microsoft has made since the deal closed, like raising the price of Game Pass and laying off thousands of employees. And that is that. We got 3 comments. Let's see, Andy said this, the FTC knew they couldn't beat Microsoft over the Blizzard deal. And then Andy came back and called them clowns. Shouldn't have said that part. And then Theo said this, maybe even Microsoft was hoping it could be reversed, put a laughing emoji. Well, look, they never had a case, man. They never had a case. Activision Blizzard was on a first come, first served basis. Whoever had the money to put up, could have got them. Whether Google, whether Tencent, whether was it Comcast, Disney, anybody with that kind of amount of money could have gotten them. So yeah, so they never really had a case. They tried, and then the Jacqueline Scott Corley really let them, call them out in court and state the reason why they lost. So yeah, they just never did. Sony tried to stop. Sony tried to play hardball. They didn't have the money. Sony and Google was against the deal. They were the main two that was trying to come at Microsoft over it, besides the FTC. So They tried, man, but it was Microsoft's turn. Yeah, they never they never really had anything, you know, against Microsoft. They tried, you know. Yes, that deal was big. It was big, and like was it Satya Nadella said, it was worth the case was worth the pushback it was getting. But I mean they saw it all the way through, you know. So yeah, and you know, the FTC was talking about the lesson of competition, but that argument was weak. That argument didn't even stand up, because even when Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard, the game industry didn't stop. The game industry didn't stop from moving. It was actually growing. So yeah, and it still is growing. You know, just because you lay a bunch of people off, that don't mean that those people can't come together and form a studio. You know, you know. I mean, just because you lay them off, you know, they got that option to do so. So yeah. But other than that, man, you know, Game Pass lives on. You know, yeah, they rushed it. They rushed it too. You know, yeah. Facebook name was mentioned, and they was like with their claws out, had to get it. Yeah. So yeah, it was up for grabs, man. So they beat everybody to it, you know. And you know, Sony, you know, they had some shooters. I think it was Resistance, Killzone, and SOCOM. But the developers of those games never stayed consistent with it, like Activision did Call of Duty. You know, that's how Call of Duty got big, because once they had a user base, they kept adding another chapter and another chapter and another chapter and another chapter and another chapter, and the user base is like this, just growing every chapter, growing. And they split when Fortnite and PUBG came out with Battle Royale. Activision jumped on it. Warzone, yeah, split Call of Duty into two, and then the rest was history. So now you have like a two-headed monster coming at you, Warzone, and then Call of Duty with the single player and the multiplayer. So yeah, so yeah, so good move on them. Of course, we're talking Activision Blizzard here. Blizzard with World of Warcraft and StarCraft, and yeah. So yeah, Microsoft jumped at that when they seen it. You know, yeah. I mean, they just bought Mahjong for like 2.5 billion, and then they turned around and then bought ZeniMax Bethesda for 7.5 billion. They didn't stop there. And I remember what was it, Sean Layden, the former Sony boss. He was talking about Game Pass is not sustainable. Okay, that all changed. That statement changed quick. As soon as Microsoft heard about Activision Blizzard, they solidified Game Pass with that deal. That's for sure. So yeah, and they haven't looked back since. So yeah, they jumped on it. You know, they were on the move, man. You know, they were on the move. Now you got some people, you know, talking about so you got some people in the game industry talking about Xbox is dead and all this. These people don't know what they're talking about, because Microsoft has Windows, and Windows feeds Game Pass the energy it needs. So yeah, you know, Game Pass ain't going nowhere. You know, one thing about Microsoft, they didn't sit around though just waiting for the judges to make decision. They were making move within the case, like, okay, start planting their seeds all over the place. You know, so good move for them. Good move. It was a good move on their part. Instead of sitting there letting seconds, minutes, hours, days, and weeks go by, they're like, okay, you know, we're going to start giving out 10-year contracts all over the place. Yep, and that'll alleviate the you know, the judges' decision. So the judges just wanted to see what Microsoft was going to do, and they followed through on it. They had they had a what you call it they had Ubisoft distributing Call of Duty, and they could have bought Ubisoft within that same time frame, but the judges, they were like they were trying to play hardball, you know. So yeah, yeah, Ubisoft could have been under the Microsoft umbrella, you know. During that time, Microsoft had the money to purchase them. They could have done it, but yeah, the judges weren't going to let that slide. So, because they just bought Activision Blizzard. So, yeah, but good move on their part, man. So, they had to move on that quick, you know. They had to move on it, and they did. So, and no disrespect to no disrespect to the FTC, but they just didn't have a strong case. They just didn't. You know, it's like they were trying to come up with something to make it stick, you know, and it wasn't holding, you know. So yeah, but now Microsoft got Activision Blizzard, and they got games to make now. So yeah. Now that StarCraft 3 is in development now by this I think a Korean company, I think. So yeah, that's in the works. And Bethesda is updating Starfield. So right now Microsoft, I think crossplay is their main focus right now. You know, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that just be making up stuff that don't make no sense, and Microsoft putting their games on Sony's platform, PC, the cloud, you know, put them on TVs. Even Nintendo now is going to get some Microsoft games. So it's really, while they were doing that, I really realized that it's really about, they're really trying to achieve cross-play, you know, and they're trying to force Sony and Nintendo to do the same, you know, instead of keeping their games to themselves, keeping the games to themselves. They need to spread it out. For instance, like Nintendo could take Mario Kart and said, okay, they put it on PlayStation, put it on Xbox, or even PC, and then do a cross-play with Mario Kart, the new Mario Kart that they have. They can do that, but it's Nintendo we're talking about here. And the same could be said for Sony. Sony had a chance to do the same with Spider-Man, and they should have capitalized on it. And they didn't, and Microsoft saw that. Microsoft saw that as a weakness and said, okay, we got you now. So yeah, and that's why you see Microsoft moving all over the place. Instead of being stagnant, just focusing on console sales numbers and console exclusives, they're putting their games all over the place. That's all they're doing. So yeah, and it's working. So good move on their part. So, but other than that, man, yeah, they snatched up Activision Blizzard with the quickness though. They moved like a bunch of piranhas would. Snatched that. Yeah. And they never look back, man. So what they're doing now, it's all about crossplay, you know. It's all about crossplay. Yeah. They're gonna keep some exclusives on their consoles, but the rest they're gonna be like they're gonna be spreading some of their games out so they can create a crossplay network, you know, across the game industry. That's what they're doing. So yeah. Other than that, man, that's my thoughts on the whole thing, you know. You learn I mean, I think Valve and Take-Two, they were just watching this case. I mean, they went to the court case, but they were just watching and learning from it, you know, to see how Microsoft does things, you know. So yeah, yeah, they were watching and learning. So yeah, but you know, the case, I mean, it was a good move on. It was a good move on their part though, to get Activision Blizzard, because they needed it, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, ZeniMax Bethesda have some good games, but we're talking Activision Blizzard here, so they needed that, you know, so to solidify themselves. But as far as like people on YouTube talking about Xbox is dead and Xbox is this, these people have no clue. It's all about crossplay now. That's what it's all about now. You know? Instead of sitting there just talking about sales and exclusives and console sales numbers, you know, it's all about playing together now. So that's what Microsoft is trying to achieve. You know, so yeah, that's why you see Sea of Thieves on PlayStation, PC, and now the Nintendo Switch. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna lay this video for y'all to enjoy it. Nice talking to you people again. Chris, the Star Wars Star Trek thing. Dark Side. Go. Peace.